Hello everyone, my name is Gabby, and it's time for another Hugtto Precure review. I know, I'm sorry for the delay, this basically came out just before the next episode, but at the end of the day, the Dragon Ball Super reviews, until they are done, until Dragon Ball Super is over, those reviews are going to be my priority to try and get those out first. This is secondary, so at the very least, I did get it out before the next episode. But yeah, so this is now the Hugtto Precure review, and this time I'm reviewing episode 2. As people at school discuss Cure Yell, Hana tries to keep her new identity a secret while trying to find other Precure and taking care of Hugtan. As she starts having difficulties with this, the class representative Yakushiji Saaya finds them and helps with Hugtan. Seeing how smart and caring she is, Hana is about to ask her to be a Precure when another monster attacks. Hana transforms to fight it, and remembering her words gives Saaya the courage to awaken her own Mirai crystal and transform into Cure Ange. With Ange's help, Cure Yell defeats the monster and probably asks Saaya to join the team, which she accepts. So, what did I like about this episode? Well, first of all, on its own, I honestly did enjoy Saaya as a character. I feel like she has enough depth to her and there's enough stuff that we don't know about her that I could totally imagine them kind of following her character across like 50 episodes. But I think the thing that especially kind of stood out to me that I found really interesting was sort of the interactions between Saaya, Hana, and Harry. In that Hana thinks that Saaya is just really cool and kind and caring and smart, and in fact Harry seems to agree. In fact, upon seeing Saaya being so good at handling Hugtan, Harry seems to sort of prefer the idea of Saaya being a Precure over Hana because she's just sort of better at it. But at the same time, Saaya seems to have a little bit of an inferiority complex going on, and even though people are going around and complimenting her, first of all, she doesn't seem to really accept it, and she also seems to really appreciate Hana's boundless enthusiasm and kind of, clear goal as to what she wants to do in the future, because she's not necessarily as sure. The way all those characters kind of interacted with each other, I feel like gave them all way more depth than they would just have individually. Just the idea that even though Hana can produce a lot of this kind of, future power stuff that they need, the fact that there are girls who might be better at being mothers or being Precure than she is, and she might not necessarily be perfect at everything, and the fact that even though Saaya is nice and kind, she also doesn't seem to have very high self-esteem and also doesn't really know if she has that much courage. It's fun. It's like all of these characters have clear flaws, and there's also that idea that none of them seem to really believe that they're that cool on their own, but there's always somebody else who believes that they are cool. Also, I like how Saaya being the smart one actually also sort of related to how she was a Cure Ange and what she sort of brought to the group being a Precure. Like in the fight this week, although Cure Yell was still sort of strong enough to really sort of fight against the monster, the fact that she couldn't really hit them very well, and it wasn't until Cure Ange showed up that she sort of basically came up with a strategy to sort of target the legs that actually helped both of them be able to win. I kind of hope they keep this a trend for the rest of the season, because heck, the very idea of having kind of more of a strategist fighter can make the battle scenes a bit more interesting, a bit more unique, but I'm not necessarily expecting it. It would just be a really fun idea. And another quick thing is that they also addressed the one big kind of structural question I had over last episode, and that was that whole sort of thing as to how did Saaya know that Hana was going to be on the roof, and why did she immediately want to be her friend and sort of look after her? The answer that they gave was that Saaya also heard Hugtan, and in fact, just like Hana, she was going up to the roof to try and sort of see where Hugtan was coming from, and as the class representative, she already knew that Hana was going to be moving there, so she already had some sort of reason to try and take care of her anyway. When I'm asking these questions, I'm not always expecting answers, so it's nice that I actually did get answers there. As for what I didn't like about this episode, well, the main conflict of this episode seemed to be the idea that Hana initially didn't really seem to want help or want more Precure sort of joining, basically because she thinks that being a sort of lone wolf hero would kind of just make her look cooler. Now, I'm not going to say that this is out of character for her, because it's clear that trying to look cool is a very high priority for her, but at the same time, it almost felt a little bit kind of mean-spirited and made her look almost a little bit selfish, which is a little bit strange for the character, where last episode we were kind of really properly introduced to her by seeing her altruistic streak. That is, trying to save an old woman from getting hit by a bull and then helping her with her groceries. And the other weird thing about this conflict is, sort of judging by the events of the fight scene, you sort of assume the point of the fight scene was to try and sort of show to Hana the actual value of working with others, because she wasn't able to defeat the monster without Cure Ange's teacher's help, but the weird thing is it seemed like she'd already learned her lesson even before the monster attacked. Like, she was just about to ask Saaya to become a Precure before the monster showed up. It meant that the battle scene seemed to be there to try and teach Hana something, but to teach her something that she already knew. Also, speaking of the fight scene, the problem about seeing so many Precure recruitment episodes is you start sort of comparing them in your head and you have very clear understandings of what you think is going to happen, and when it doesn't happen you get kind of confused. In that this episode, Saaya's Mirai Crystal triggered not because of some kind of like, big resolve moment or some sort of moment where Saaya decided to sort of get her courage back, but more just sort of her thinking about Hana's words to her, and she only really has that big moment when she decides she's going to have courage after the Mirai Crystal has already shown up, when she's just about to transform. And I almost feel like those events should have been kind of reversed. Like, you'd think the big character resolve moment would be the thing that would trigger her Mirai Crystal to show up, and not just sort of her thinking about how much she cares about Hana. So, as for next episode, it looks like the third member is going to have to wait a while, because we're already getting to one of those episodes where Hugtto is crying and is misbehaving and nobody knows why, and they have to go and try and cheer her up. It's also the obligatory promoting the merchandise of dealing and taking care of Hugtto episode. So I don't necessarily have very high expectations over what they're going to do. I feel like there's going to be a very paint by the numbers sort of, this is how the merch operates this season. But I am at least interested to see more of the interactions between Hana and Saaya, and also the interactions between Saaya and Harry, given that Saaya is officially a Precure now, and Harry seemed to be really excited about that. So that was Hugtto Precure episode 2. Honestly, it was far more enjoyable and interesting on its own than I expected. They didn't necessarily put as much exposition than I thought, and they didn't also necessarily put as much exploration into Saaya's character as I thought, but one thing that they did do that I did find interesting was kind of really sort of looking at the team dynamic, sort of seeing how these girls are different to each other, how they sort of relate to each other, and what everybody else sort of thinks of them, as well as what they in particular contribute to being Precure. Obviously, it is still introduction, and in fact this episode also raised a lot more questions that were probably not going to get answered for quite a long time, which does make things more interesting and does make me want to keep watching to see what happens. I know we don't know everything about Saaya yet, and we probably don't know everything about Hana yet, and obviously we definitely don't know everything about Hugtto, so I honestly do want to keep watching and I do want to see what happens. So yeah, hopefully next week I'll be able to get my review out quicker. I think I kind of have a bit of a better idea as to how I'm going to schedule this stuff, so hopefully that'll happen. Even though next week is an episode I'm not necessarily that much looking forward to, I do kind of want to see what they do with it and what more things we're going to learn about the season next week. So this is Gabby signing out, and I'll see you all next week. Bye guys!